MMAOB Daily Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Adam Martin, joined by my good buddy here, Cole Shelton, to break down UFC Uruguay. Cole, just initial thoughts on the card before we get into it, and how are you doing, man?
I'm doing well, but the card, good there's a title fight on free TV, but yeah, what is it, 13? I know there was 14 fights at one point. I don't know if they switch any, but that's a lot of fights and a lot of new European fighters, which should be interesting.
Yeah, there's 13 fights now. There was 14 originally. And actually, Best Fight Odds still has the one fight listed. That's Taylor Santos versus Ariane Carnelossi. That fight has been scratched. So that fight's not happening. So 13 fights, definitely a lot of fights. Cole, we'll plug all our stuff at the end of the show, man. We'll just get right into it right now. So, like I said, 13 fights. We'll break down all the fights. We'll also talk about Contender Series tonight briefly. I already broke down the show on this morning show. The tonight show, I should say, in this morning show. And we'll talk briefly about UFC Newark and Colby Covington. But let's get right into this card, man. So, again, 13 fights. I'll be using the Tapology bout order here. So, we'll start off with the bottom here. First fight of the night. We got a women's bout between Polyana Viana and Veronica Macedo. Opening odds had Polyana Viana minus 170, Veronica Macedo plus 130. Currently, Polyana Viana minus 140, and Veronica Macedo plus 110. Cole, who's your pick in this opening bout of UFC Uruguay?
Well, I'm surprised Macedo's still in the UFC. She's 0-3. This fight, I know Fiona had all that coverage for when she beat up that mugger, but the loser has to get cut here. Fiona's on a 2-fight losing streak, lost to JJ Aldridge and Hannah Cyphers. Macedo's still looking for her first UFC win. She lost to Jillian Robertson, on Andrea Lee, and Ashley Evans-Smith. The first two aren't bad losses. Ashley Evans-Smith is kind of like that. She is like that below end of the flyweight division. But this is a fight. It should be interesting. I think Viana gets it done. I think she'll just be able to use her striking. I think her striking is better. But then if she wants to go to the ground, I think she's just a better overall fighter that she can use her grappling. She has submission wins. We've seen Macedo get submitted before, but that is Robertson, who is better at jiu-jitsu than Viana. But I think Viana gets done by decision, but I wouldn't be surprised if she finishes this fight either.
Yeah, I'm surprised Macedo's still in the UFC as well. Like, let's be fair. She's very good looking, and I think that plays a part into it. But 0-3 record is not good enough, I don't think, for the UFC. And if you look back at her record, Cole, she actually had a draw before she got in the UFC. So she's on a 0-3 and 1 streak since 2016. And to me, this is obviously a must-win fight for her. She's only 23 years old, so she's pretty young, but just hasn't really shown much in the UFC. Polyana Viana, 10-3 record. She's been, I guess, somewhat better in the UFC, 1-2 record. The Hannah Cyphers fight was pretty close. She also has a really good win over Amanda Ribas by knockout from 2015. That's a good win. She has more experience. I think she's performed better in the UFC. I like Viana here, Cole, and I'll be honest, man, I think the odds are a little low on her. Minus 140 seems a bit low. So, again, she opened at minus 170, so people don't seem to be betting on her right now. I think that the line might actually go up closer to the end of the fight week. But right now, I would definitely be looking at Polyana Viana at minus 140. I think there could be some value there. Next up, we have a welterweight bout. This booked on short notice. Gilbert Burns is taking on Alexei Konchenko. We'll be talking about his brother Herbert Burns later on in the show. I just did a double take. I'm like, whoa, both the Burnses. But yeah, they both are fighting this week. Gilbert Burns took this fight on short notice, moving up a weight class, taking on Konchenko here. To me, it looks like a tough fight, but Konchenko opened at minus 180. Burns opened at plus 140. Right now, we have Konchenko minus 155, Burns plus 125. Who's your pick, Cole?
Well, this is a really interesting fight because, Burns had some trouble making weight. He's supposed to fight Obed Mercy earlier before 231, had to get pulled for weight issues. But Konchenko's a tough guy. He's undefeated for a reason. Welterweight, I favor Konchenko in this one. Short notice for Burns. But again, he doesn't have to cut weight. It's kind of like if Burns can get this down to the ground, his jiu-jitsu is one of the highest levels in the UFC that I think he could submit him. But I think Konchenko just keeps the fight on the feet, uses his striking to really just piece up Burns and get a late finish or just win by decision.
I like Konchenko too, man. Again, I'm surprised by the odds. They seem a little low to me here. He's 20-0. The guy has not lost. 35 years old, so that's something to keep in mind. He's a little bit older for a prospect. He has been fighting since 2013, but he's fought some really good competition. Look at some of the guys he's fought. Even before he got in the UFC, he fought some decent competition. Then since he's got there, he's beaten Thiago Alves and Yushin Okami via lopsided decision in both fights. So to me, he's a really good fighter. He was supposed to fight Laureano Staropoli. That would have been a tough fight to predict, I believe, because Staropoli's looked really good as well. But I like him here, man. Burns is great. Don't get me wrong. Gilbert Burns is awesome. Amazing jiu-jitsu. 33 years old, so he's, again, a little bit older. I wouldn't call him a prospect anymore at this point, but he's a great fighter, man. I mean, he's won 2 straight fights. He's actually won 4 of his last 5 fights. But you mentioned, Cole, the weight cut and stuff. Like, he's never fought at 170 before in the UFC. So that's something to keep in mind here for sure. The guy's only a lightweight before. He's going to be fighting a bigger guy here in Shevchenko, and I don't like the matchup for him. So give me Shevchenko here, man. I think he grinds out a decision, probably outpoints this guy in the feet. And shout out to our guys, Jersey Boys MMA here. We are using StreamYard, guys. It's pretty cool so far. So no more Google Hangouts like I talked about last week, Cole, but I like this new app so far. So far, so good. And so far, so good for Shevchenko in the UFC. I think he wins this fight, Cole. Give me Shevchenko. Minus 155, man. I think there is some value there because I do think he wins this fight. Next up, we have Alex De Silva taking on Rodrigo Vargas. Alex De Silva opened as minus 245 favorite. Rodrigo Vargas opened at plus 175. Currently, we have De Silva minus 265, Vargas plus 205. Who's your pick, Cole?
The interesting fight. Vargas making a UFC debut. He's fought in Combate, which is they've really been setting a lot of appeal to the UFC as of late. De Silva, his UFC debut, he didn't look good. He got submitted. But this fight is going to be interesting. Like, how does Vargas look in, like, make the Octagon debut? Like, the Octagon jitters. A lot of people think they're a real thing. De Silva fought his UFC fight, lost. So I favored De Silva just with the experience. I think it goes the distance. But this is a fight I wouldn't be comfortable betting on between the two because you never really know how someone will look in their UFC debut for Vargas.
Yeah, no, I agree 100% with everything you just said. There's no way you can bet on this fight. Minus 245 or minus 265 now. I don't know why he's that big of a favorite, Cole. I mean, just to me, didn't look good at all in that fight with what's his name, Alexander Yakovlev. I remember doing the play-by-play for that fight, and I'm just like, man, this guy's gonna lose this fight. Like, he just did not look good. And Yakovlev never fights, so that's a bad loss in my opinion. If you look at some of the guys he's fought in the regional scene, there was a few guys that had decent records, Cole, but look at his Tapology page, man. A lot of these guys don't even have records. So, like, who is he even fighting to get that 22 record? That worries me a little bit. Rodrigo Vargas took this fight on very short notice. We should mention that. He's 33 years old. He's filling in for the injured Rafael Fiziev. So I think he took it on 2 weeks' notice. You mentioned that his fights in Kabachi, Cole. He did knock out Mike Dellatorre, former UFC veteran, with a head kick in his last fight to get the call. So good for him, but that fight was last May, so he hasn't fought in a long time. I don't know. I think Vargas has a better chance than the odds indicate, and I was looking at him as a dog here, but I don't know. There's just something about him taking the fight on short notice that I don't like. So, you know what? This could be a dog or pass situation, probably is based on the odds, but I still have to go with De Silva based on that just the UFC experience and also the fact that he does have more experience in his career as well. So I think that's why I lean towards him here. But Cole, there's no way I'd bet him at minus 265. Next up, we have next up, we have a bantamweight bout between Geraldo De Freitas and Chris Gutierrez. I like this matchup. Chris Gutierrez opened at minus 190. De Freitas opened at plus 150. Currently, we have Gutierrez minus 105 and De Freitas minus 115. So the odds have kind of flipped right now with essentially a pick 'em with a slight lean towards De Freitas. Who's your pick, Cole?
This is an interesting fight because De Freitas' last win was Philippe Clares, which didn't look like a big win at the time, but he's coming off a win of Domingo Pilarte, who a lot of people were high on. I was pretty high on him, so that looks like a good win now. Chris Gutierrez coming off that win over Ryan McDonald. Should be an interesting fight. De Freitas has some submission wins. Gutierrez has been submitted before, so I think it's a fight where if it stays on the feet, I favor Gutierrez. If it goes down to the ground, I favor De Freitas. And I think De Freitas can get this fight down to the ground, submit Gutierrez, and get the win.
Yeah, it's a good fight. I like this matchup. You're right. De Freitas' win looks a lot better now because, what's his name? Claris looked pretty good against Pilarte. I thought he won that fight. A lot of people didn't, but I thought he won. He's definitely on a nice win streak here. What's it, 8 straight wins? So good for him. Actually, 7 straight wins, excuse me, but still pretty good win streak. I don't know, though. I like Gutierrez, man. I think he looked amazing against Ryan McDonald. And that guy's not great, don't get me wrong, but he looked amazing in that fight. And his other losses to Leone Barcelos in the UFC, that's not a bad loss. That guy's incredible, too. So I've actually been pretty impressed with him lately, Gutierrez, I should say. And he trains at a good camp, too, man. I think he's a Factory X guy. So I like Gutierrez here as an underdog. Give me Gutierrez minus 105. I think he wins this fight by decision. Next up, we got a flyweight bout, Cole. I like this fight a lot. Raulian Paiva taking on Rogerio Bontorin. To me, Cole, this could be fight of the night. I like this fight a lot. Odds. Bontorin opened at minus 135. Paiva opened at minus 105. Right now, we have Bontorin minus 115, Paiva minus 105. So essentially pick him with a slight lean towards Bontorin. Cole, who's your pick?
Well, another interesting fight. I think this could be fight of the night. Paiva's last fight against Kai Kara France. I thought he won the fight. It was at 234. It was in like where Kara France is from, so he got the split decision. And it's kind of interesting. Bonterran, his last win was split, and Paiva's last 2 fights were split decision. So they really they fight really close fights. But I favor Paiva in this one. I was really impressed with him against Kara France. I think he did a lot in that fight. He showed a lot of promise. And Bonterran, I thought he lost the last one. He looked okay against Bibilatov, who is a really good opponent. But I think they just kind of stand and trade in this one. I think Paiva will get it done by decision.
This is a really tough fight to call. It kind of reminds me of that fight you saw 2 weeks ago with Figueiredo and Pantoja. Just a really good flyweight fight. I think it's going to be a fight of the night possibly. So I don't know, Cole. This is a really tough one to call, and I might change my mind later in the week. I kind of lean towards Bontorin very, very, very slightly, and it's a very slight lean. Like I like the odds here. I think they're bang on really with a slight lean towards Bontorin. Like, yeah, the Bibilatov fight was close, Cole, but that's such a big win to me. That's a huge win. That guy was very highly touted. So to me, that's a pretty good win. He had that win on the Contender series as well. He has lost to Tanaka. I mean, yeah, that guy's pretty good, but at least he got the experience of fighting him. Paiva's I thought the Kara France fight was great. I think I scored it for Paiva actually, so I gotta go back and look, but I'm pretty sure I scored it for Paiva, and it was a great fight. He also has that win over Santos, former UFC fighter, so that's pretty good. I like them both, Cole. I just slightly lean towards Bontorin just based on the guys he's fought lately, but they're both very similar as far as experience goes and as far as win streaks go and stuff like that. So close fight, but slightly lean towards Bontorin. I don't feel great about it. Next up, we have a women's strawweight bout between Tisha Torres and Marina Rodriguez. Tisha Torres minus 115, Marina Rodriguez plus 115 were the opening odds. Currently, Torres minus 145, Rodriguez plus 125. Who's your pick, Cole?
Well, I actually thought the odds would favor Rodriguez just because of how Torres has looked, but I still like Torres in this one because I was just about to say, like, if she was the underdog, like, people are writing off Torres. If you look at her last 3 losses, it's Jessica Andrade, the champion, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, the former champ, and probably if she beats Waterson, gonna get a title shot. And then Weili Zhang, who's fighting for the title. Those are the top 3 girls, except for Rose Namajunas, who's injured. But those are 3 of the top 4 or 5 best strawweights in the world. So I think Torres gets this done. Rodriguez, she had the draw against Brenda Marcos, which wasn't too impressive. She did beat Jessica Aguilar, which wasn't like, I don't know, Aguilar isn't that good, but I like Torres in this one. I think she will use her striking. If she wants to take it down to the ground, I think she can. But I think it just goes the distance. I think Torres will just be the better fighter all around.
This is a close fight to call, I think. So let's talk about both fighters here. Tisha Torres, listen, man, I know she's got the job done. She has a good record in the UFC, but she is one of the most boring fighters in the UFC. And there's a reason why she's on the prelims on the card in Uruguay now. The UFC matchmakers are definitely soured on her. Yes, the 3-fight losing streak doesn't help, but Cole, when you have 1 finish in your career, that doesn't help either. 1 finish in 14 fights, that's not good. So she's just a fighter that goes the distance a lot. I don't think she's a contender anymore by any means, but to be fair to her, she's lost to Zhang, Jędrzejczyk, and Andrade. So those are 3 of the best, and she also beat Waterson before that. So she's lost to 3 of the best in the world. She also has, a lot of experience. She has a win over Rose Namajunas. She has a win over Paige Van Zandt, Felice Herrig. She has a lot of good wins. I just don't like the fact that she's fighting to these really boring decisions. Like, at least finish a fight once in a while, right? And then she takes on Rodriguez here, who has looked, I guess, okay, Cole. She beat Aguilar. That's not a great win. Obviously, had the draw with Marcos, but here's something to keep in mind. She's so much taller, right? Like, Torres is so small. I think that's why the odds are kind of where they are right now, just the size difference here. She is older, though, 32, so there's some things going against her. I'm not 100% ready to write off Torres just yet as well, Cole. I do think that she probably edges out a decision here, but there's no way I'd put my money on Tisha Torres coming off 3 straight losses. I was looking at Rodriguez as a dog. I just think that Torres has all that experience, and I think that will come in handy here. I see Torres winning a really boring decision in this fight. So give me Tisha Torres by decision, but I'm not looking forward to this one. I don't think it's going to be a very good fight. Next up, we have an interesting heavyweight bout, Cole. I'm not sure who you're thinking about this one, but this is going to be a banger for sure. Someone's getting knocked out, in my opinion. Cyril Gagne taking on Rafael Pessoa. Gagne, where are the opening odds here? Gagne opened at minus 380. Pessoa opened at plus 260. Currently, we have Gagne at minus 420. Pessoa plus 335. Who's your pick, Cole?
Well, the odds are really high for this one. Heavyweight fight, it takes 1 punch. This dog or pass situation, I could not bet on Gagne. He's still so young in his MMA career. Like, he was the TKO champ, which is for people that don't know, it's probably maybe the best promotion regional scenes in Canada, or either best or second best, probably up there. Pessoa, though, he's fought in LFA. He's fought in Brazil. Like, I don't know. It's a fight. I favor Gagne. I've watched some of his fights in TKO. I like what I've seen. But this is a fight I wouldn't bet Gagne because heavyweight, anything can happen. But I think Gagne will win, but it's not a fight I'd bet on.
Yeah, I pretty much have the same breakdown as you, man. It's the odds don't make sense to me. I don't know why this guy's minus 420 right now. Like, what has he proven? 3-0 in his career. Listen, he's looked good. Don't get me wrong. His wins look good. Roger Souza knocked him out. Adam Diska knocked him out. Bobby Sullivan finished him. I don't know who that guy is, but the other wins at TKO are decent wins. But again, 3-0. He only has 3 fights, so he's very, very green, very raw in the sport. Only been fighting since last year. He made his pro debut, Cole, last August 2nd. So he's been fighting for just over 1 year. He's already in the UFC. That says to me that the UFC likes this guy, but it also says to me that he's got some holes in his game we haven't seen yet. And Pessoa, I'm not sure if he's going to be the guy to exploit them yet. It's hard to say. 9-0 in his career, 30 years old. You mentioned the fight in LFA against Brian Heaton. I mean, that's a journeyman. That's not a horrible win by any means. That's a decent gatekeeper kind of guy in the regional scene. So that's not a bad win at all. But I don't know, Cole. Other than that, he hasn't fought anyone that I know. I don't know, Cole. This can go either way. I think definitely a dog or pass situation. Minus 420. There's no way I'd bet that on this guy. But I have been a little bit more impressed with him. So I'm going to go with Gagne to win by knockout, Cole. Someone will get KO in this fight. There's no way I would ever bet on this guy at minus 420. And I think it is dog or pass. So if someone wants to take a shot at Pessoa here at plus 335, not a bad idea. We've talked about this many times, Cole. Heavyweight fights take one punch. It's never a bad idea to throw a few bucks on a big dog in a heavyweight fight. So I'll take Gagne by knockout, but there's no way I'd bet on this fight at those odds. Next up, we have a featherweight bout between Enrique Barzola and Bobby Moffitt. Barzola opened at minus 270. Moffitt opened at plus 230. Currently, we have Barzola minus 145, Moffitt plus 125. So everyone's betting on Moffitt so far. What's your thoughts on that, Cole?
Well, I agree with the better. I think Moffitt gets it done. This is a super interesting fight. I'm really looking forward to this fight. Moffitt is coming off that loss to Bryce Mitchell, but he looked really impressive in that fight. That was a really good fight. Before that, he had that controversial win over Chaz Skelly where the refs stopped the fight where he didn't tap, but he wasn't out. It was kind of controversial. Barzola's coming off the loss to Aguilera, and then before that has a win over Brandon Davis. It's an interesting fight. I think both will want to keep it standing. But Moffitt, I think, has the advantage on the ground. So I think if he starts to lose on the feet, I think he'll look for the takedown and try to use his jiu-jitsu. I think this will be a really back-and-forth fight where Moffitt gets a decision win.
This is going to be a good fight. I think it's definitely an interesting one for sure as well. Barzola, 30 years old. He's 15-4-1 in his career. In the UFC, he actually has a 5-2 record. The loss to Aguilera, I don't think that's a bad loss. That guy's decent. He has some decent wins as well. Brandon Davis, Matt Bissett. Those are okay wins. Not great by any means, but they're decent. He also beat that Humberto Badney guy we'll talk about later. So he has some decent wins. And he also trains the American Top Team, Cole, which is something I forgot to talk about when we spoke about Tisha Torres. I think that is a huge advantage for any fighter training at that camp. It's an amazing camp. Always put together good game plans. So I think that is a plus for him. Moffitt has looked pretty good as well. 14-4 record. They call him the Wolfman. He is 1-1 in the UFC. Mentioned the fight with Skelly. Controversial, but he might have won that fight anyways. And then the Bryce Mitchell fight was really close. Could win either way. It was a great fight. So this guy's coming off of some decent fights. He has really good experience on the regional scene. This is a really tough fight to call, Cole. I can definitely see why the odds I've tightened up here. I think people are on the right track betting on Moffitt at those opening odds, but I do slightly lean towards Barzola. I think he can outpoint this guy for a decision. So I'll take Barzola to win a really close decision, but yeah, I can see why people are betting on Moffitt. Also, I should mention he's an MMA lab guy, so that's a good gym as well. Next up, we have a middleweight bout between Oscar Pichota and Rodolfo Vieira. Vieira opened at minus 300. Pichota opened at plus 200. Currently, we have Vieira minus 210 and Pichota at plus 175. Who's your pick, Cole?
I like Vieira, but I don't like those odds. This is a classic striker versus grappler fight. Vieira's really good on the ground, really good jiu-jitsu. Submits face all his opponents. Pichota is he's coming off that loss to Mearshar by submission. Before that, knocked out Tim Williams. So if he can keep the fight on the feet, I favor him, but I think Vieira can get down to the ground, submit him, and get another submission loss on his record.
Yeah, I agree 100% with you on this one, Cole. It is striker versus grappler, and it looks like it's a setup fight for Vieira to get the win. The guy, like you said, is really good in the ground. Pichota coming off the submission loss. I think the odds maybe are a little bit high for this guy, considering he only has 5 fights. We have to mention that 5 MMA fights, a lot of jiu-jitsu matches, of course. So he's taking it's his UFC debut as well. So that's interesting. But you know what? I think that the UFC wants this guy to win. I think he gets the win, Cole. So give me Rodolfo Vieira by submission. And I'm seeing if there's odds on that. Nothing yet. So I think that probably will be favored, honestly. But I think that's the way the fight ends. Next up, we have a light heavyweight bout. This is a rebooking between Volkan Oezdemir and Ilir Latifi. And I think you've interviewed Volkan. You'll talk about him in a second here. But this fight was supposed to happen at UFC Sweden back in June. Was canceled due to Latifi, I think, hurting his back. It was rescheduled for UFC Newark last week, but Volkan had visa issues again, and the fight was rescheduled for this card in Uruguay. So tell me about your interview with Volkan and give me your pick. Excuse me, the odds first. Sorry, guys. Quickly, where are they? We have right now Volkan minus 140, Latifi plus 120, and it opened at Volkan minus 165, Latifi plus 125. So tightened up a little bit, but still Volkan's the lean here for the odds makers. Who's your pick, Cole? And tell me about your interview with Volkan as well.
Yeah, I talked to him before the Stockholm card, and I talked to him again last week. But it's super interesting. Like, so he's just training in Switzerland, kind of just moving around Europe to camps, which is kind of weird. But something that was really interesting is before this Latifi fight was booked, he's like, I'm just gonna go to Sweden, train with Gustafsson and Latifi, like get good looks at light heavyweight. And he said he liked it there, was training like weeks there, like him and Latifi and Gustafsson, and now he has to fight Latifi. So it's kind of weird, but Alistair Overeem was a big part of this camp for him. He really worked a lot with Overeem, which I like. But this is a super interesting fight. Oezdemir, 3-fight losing streak, but I think that Reyes fight was super close, then lost to Smith and Cormier, who are the top light heavyweights, and Cormier, you see what he's done at heavyweight. The TV coming out that loss to Corey Anderson, really lackluster fight, not much happened. But I favor Oezdemir in this one. I think his power can get it done. I wouldn't be surprised if he knocks out Latifi. But this is a fight, I think, cardio, whoever has the better cardio, if this fight goes into the third round, will be a really interesting thing because Oezdemir gassed his last fight against Reyes and Smith. Latifi gassed against Anderson, so it's kind of interesting. If they both gas in the third, it could just be one punch and someone gets knocked out. But I favor Oezdemir. I think he has the striking advantage. I think he'll just stay on the feet.
Yeah, essentially a striker grappler, although Latifi has some striking as well. He has some knockouts. I lean towards Oezdemir as well. Even with the 3-fight losing skate, Cole, I just think he's the better fighter, man. Latifi's cardio is something that really concerns me in this fight as well. I think the later the fight goes, the more Oezdemir has an advantage. Latifi has that power for sure. He could catch Oezdemir on the chin and knock him out, but I feel like it's more likely Oezdemir actually catches Latifi. If not, he wins the decision. So give me Volkan Oezdemir. I think he grinds out a decision. As far as a bet goes, I mean, it's interesting. I got to think about that one a little bit more. Minus 140 now, it's getting into betting range, but it is light heavyweight, so you never really know. Someone could get KO with one punch as well, just like we talked about that heavyweight bet earlier. Next up, we have a featherweight bout between Humberto Bandetti and Luis Garagorri. Garagorri is the lone Uruguayan fighter on the card. He's, I believe, actually born in Brazil, but he's fighting in Uruguay. So that's interesting to keep in mind here. The odds for this one it was actually a pick'em at open at minus 120 each. Currently, we have Bandetti as a plus 115 dog and Garagorri is a minus 135 favorite. Who's your pick, Cole?
I like Garagorri in this one. I think this is kind of a setup fight for him to get a win in front of the home crowd. I haven't been impressed with Bandetti. He's coming off the 2 losses to Austin Arnett, who hasn't looked that good in the UFC. Gabriel Benavides, he lost to. He does have a win over Martin Bravo, but again, he's at the bottom tier of featherweight. Gargaro, he's undefeated, but again, you never know how someone's going to look in their UFC debut, especially fighting in their home country. Like, it's going to be really interesting. Nerves will no doubt be there. So I could see him be nervous and not fight his game plan, but I think he'll be able to really grind out a win here. I think he'll be able to get the fight down to the ground and use his ground and pound to either finish him by TKO or get a submission win.
This is a tough one to call, I think. So Garagorri, 12-0, so that's good. He's got an undefeated record. I believe Lucas is his manager. That's, again, Johnny Walker's manager. That guy's pretty good at getting his fighters fights that they should win. Like, for instance, you got Gavin Tucker that fight with Sung Won Chu in the last card and picked up a really good win there. So he's got a good manager. But here's the problem I have with this guy, Cole. Look at who he's fought. Look at the last 2 guys. What's the record, Cole? 0-0. 0-0. They have no fights. So, yeah, he's beating up some bums. Like, who are these guys? They don't even have records, man. I don't know who he's fighting. At least Bannon is fighting the UFC. Like Oscar Arnett, Gael Benitez, they're not great fighters, but they're decent. And he did beat Martin Bravo. He also has a couple other fights early in his career against like Barzola and Pinedo, who's also in the UFC, and he beat him. So he's got way more experience. He's a younger guy. He's 24 years old. Trains at Team Oyama. That's a decent camp. I like Bandit a little bit, man, to be honest with you. I just think the experience is going to help him here. And you mentioned Garagori. Yes, again, the fact he's fighting at Uruguay, that could help him out. It could also be a problem for him because he's making his debut. He's never been in this situation before. I don't know. I'm going to lean towards Bandit in this fight, man. It's going to be a close one for sure. It could go either way, Cole, but I think just based on the experience and the level of opposition as well. And this guy has fought in some better promotions, I think, like, again, the UFC, King of the Cage, just to me, better experience, and I think he wins this fight. Next up, we have the co-main event of the evening. This is an amazing fight, Cole. I cannot wait for this one. Great fight. And to me, probably the front runner for fight of the night if I had to look at this card right now. We have Vicente Luque opening as a minus 195 favorite over Mike Perry, who is plus 155 at open right now. Luque minus 210, Perry plus 175. Who's your pick, Cole?
Well, I don't know. So one of the pet peeves I have is at the UFC is they really match pick who they like. Mike Perry does not deserve these ranked opponents that he keeps on getting. Like, if you look at his record, he lost to Ponzinibbio, which he probably didn't deserve at the time. Then he gets Max Griffin, loses to Max Griffin. Then his next two fights are against Paul Felder and Donald Cerrone, two big names. Like, I get the UFC likes him. He's a fan favorite, but I favor Luque in this one. I just think Luque's better all around. I think his striking is way better. Perry will just try to brawl with him. And you saw what happens when Luque gets in a brawl, like the Barberina fight, and he knocked out Barberina. I think he'll be able to knock out Mike Perry and get the win and get a this. But if this goes 3 rounds, this will easily fight of the night.
This fight's going to be sick. I can't wait for this fight. But again, I'm with you on the rankings and stuff. And Mike Perry getting all these ranked opponents is kind of weird. And to me, Luque, actually, I looked at the rankings today. Someone posted the update. He was just dropped out of the welterweight top 15. So to me, that's just weird. Like, this guy is so underrated, so good. Look at his record in the UFC, Cole. It's, 9-2. That's a good record. He lost to Mike Graves in his debut. That's a bad loss. But since then, he's beaten everyone except for Leon Edwards. And we all know how good Edwards is. So the thing I like about Luque, Cole, finishes his fights, all 9 wins by stoppage, either knockout or submission. So this guy can win fights everywhere they go. The great Derek Krantz fight showed that this guy's got a chin. He could take a punch and give back a punch. Mike Perry, 13-4 record. He's been pretty good at times in the UFC. I mean, he came out with a bang, got those couple knockouts. But the problem with I having Mike Perry, and he has looked better lately as far as his cardio and stuff goes, so that's good. But I think he does have an issue with his cardio. I think he can't go the full 3 rounds against a guy like Luque who can push off hard 3 rounds. We saw him in the Barberina fight, Cole, that last second knockout. So I like Luque everywhere as well. I think he stops this fight. I think he wins by knockout or submission. So give me Luque inside the distance. I think Luque is one of the most surefire winners on this card, man. Give me Luque for sure. I think he wins by probably submission, actually. I think he takes the fight to the ground and gets Perry in a spot that he doesn't want to be in. Last but not least, we have the main event of the evening. Valentina Shevchenko opened at minus 600 against Liz Carmouche plus 400. This is for the UFC women's flyweight title. Right now, we have Valentina minus 1250. Liz Carmouche plus 800. Does Liz Carmouche have a chance to win this fight, Cole?
Well, she beat Shevchenko the first time. So I know there's a lot of interesting stories how that happened. Shevchenko said, it was like at the commission. It wasn't even bad. I talked to Carmouche before this fight. And I'm like, what happened? And she's like, I threw an up kick. It cut her eyebrow, and it was gushing blood, like a huge cut. She needed stitches after the fight, and the blood was leaking to her eye, and she couldn't see, so the ref stopped it, which is a legitimate win, but that was in, 2009, 2010? They're totally different fighters since then. Shevchenko has been on a roll. But something I do like for Carmouche that's going her way that she brought up that I wasn't even thinking, she's like, if you look at who Shevchenko's fought at flyweight, none of them have knockout power or have the strength. She goes, Shevchenko's just been able to ragdoll them. She wants to take it down on the ground. She goes, she used to fight at bantamweight. She fought a lot of top girls at bantamweight and is strong and dropped down to flyweight. So that's something good going for her. And the fact that only she'll be nervous fighting a title fight. She fought Ronda Rousey in one of the biggest fights in UFC history. She's fought for the Strikeforce title. But I favor Shevchenko in this one. I think it's a closer fight than the odds suggest. But I think Shevchenko wins by a late finish in the 4th, 5th, or it goes the distance.
Yeah, the odds they're a little crazy. I mean, Liz Carmouche, she's not terrible. I mean, like you said, Cole, she has a previous win over her. Now, again, I was in 2010. These were different fighters back then. Carmouche at that time was actually a better fighter in MMA anyways. And also, there was a lot of controversy about that fight. A lot of people say that the doctor stopped it too soon, that Shevchenko wanted to fight longer, but it is what it is. Carmouche is definitely a decent fighter. She has good grinding ability. But again, another problem I have with her, Cole, she hasn't finished the fight in a long time. It's been 6 years since she finished the fight against Jessica Andrade in her debut. and she was so much bigger in that fight. Like, she just doesn't finish fights. She goes the distance. That's not going to work against Shevchenko. I think the only way to beat her in the UFC is going to be actually to knock her out. Excuse me, in the flyweight division, I should say. She has lost to Nunez, obviously, twice at bantamweight. But as far as flyweights go, Cole, I don't see anyone being able to outpoint her over 5 rounds. I think you'd have to finish her either by KO or by submission. I don't think that happens. I think, if anything, Shevchenko actually gets the finisher. So give me Shevchenko, man. The question now is, Cole, does she win by stoppage or does she win by decision? Because I think that's going to be the only way to bet the fight. The last fight against Jessica I was all over that prop on her, or I shouldn't say the prop, just the total. It was like under 4.5 rounds, I think, at like minus 110. Like, it was almost like favored that the fight was going to distance against Jessica I. So I didn't like that. Or I liked that a lot, I should say, in her favor, but I didn't understand why the odds were like that. In this case, I think it's a little tougher to say if it's going to be decision or knockout, just because Carmouche is very, very durable, very tough to stop. I still think Shevchenko probably gets the finish, though. So give me Shevchenko, like maybe by late submission or bar knockout. But I like her to win this fight, Call. I just think the odds at minus 1250, you can't really bet that. Take a look at either the prop or the totals instead, because I think that minus 1250, there's no value there. And if she loses, then you're like, oh man, why did I put her in my parlay when she didn't add any value to it? So to me, that's just not the way to go here. Instead, look at the proper totals. Next up, we'll talk about Contender Series briefly. I already broke it down in the podcast earlier, Cole. So how about, instead of just me breaking down the fights again, since I already did, give me your thoughts on maybe like 1 or 2 fighters on the card that you're keeping your eye on tonight.
Well, Harvey Park, I'm really interested to see. I think he should already be in the UFC. Really good fighter at LFA. I think this is a fight he'll win and finish the fight. I think he can be a real force in the UFC. And the other fight I'm really interested in is Herbert Burns. He looked really good in Titan FC. Used to fight in one championship, had mixed results there. Looking for a fight he was on that got him signed to the Contender Series. He looked good in that fight. And I think this is a fight. It's kind of weird they brought in Minner. He has like over 30 professional fights, which you don't really see on the Contender Series. You normally see like under 10. And if they're over 10, it's kind of weird to see. So it's weird to see him on the Contender Series, but I think this is a fight that Burns really gets the win and submits him. Other than that, there's 2 close fights: the Dwight Joseph, Jay Perrion, and the Andre Munoz and Taylor Johnson fights are really interesting. Super close fights could go either way, but I don't know. And then the other one, the women's flyweight bout, I think regardless, whoever wins that gets signed to the UFC. Always needs more women's flyweights, unless it's an absolute stinker, like they don't throw any punches or anything. But I think if it's a close fight, it goes the distance. I think the winner of that gets signed regardless if there's a finish or not.
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you said as well, Cole. I picked Park. Actually, I want you guys to go back and watch the podcast if you want to get my picks. But yeah, I like Park as well, and Burns is definitely someone to keep an eye on. Although, again, my 650 seemed a little steep for the brother of Gilbert there. Next up, let's talk about UFC Newark a little bit, Cole, since I haven't spoken to you since the card. I thought a really good card. I don't know if you did the scoring or whatnot for that event. Give me your thoughts on that in a second. But let's talk about Colby Covington here. I mean, what a performance, right? 600 plus strikes, 20 plus takedown attempts. I know people hate this guy, Cole. I get it. You know, he says stuff that's controversial. People, I think, are jealous of him because he's so successful as well. I think that plays into it as well, Cole. And he kind of plays that heel douchebag role really well, in my opinion. But the guy's amazing, right? Like, he's so good, right, Cole? Give me your thoughts on Colby, man.
Yeah, that performance was – I thought that was how it was going to go. I thought he'd just be able to grind out a win. But his cardio is so – like, he threw – what was it, over 500, 600 strikes and attempted almost or just over 20 takedowns. And the guy wasn't even breathing heavy at the end of the 5th round. Like, he looked like the first round just finished when they were reading like the judges' scorecards. Like, it's crazy. The odds got released for Usman Covington, which is really interesting. I'm surprised Usman's that big a favorite. I honestly think early on, I think it should be a pick 'em. Like, both their styles are so interesting and like they're so much of the same. They're both the high pressure guys. They use their chain wrestling, but this fight, Covington looked really impressive, short notice fight, and really just showed why he is one of the best welterweights in the world. And a lot of people forgot about him since he hasn't fought in over a year, and he dominated Robbie Lawler like that, and no one's really dominated Lawler like that in his career.
Yeah, the fight actually played out exactly how I thought it would. If you look at my breakdown on Oddsbreaker, I just said he's going to grind against the fence, get some takedowns, just kind of put the pressure and pace on. So the fight went exactly how I thought. But I was actually even more impressed than I expected to be because that, like you said, that pace and that cardio, Cole. And in 5 rounds, he was still throwing so many punches and just going for takedowns. It was crazy. So great performance by him. And I'm with you in the odds, man. They opened yesterday. I have the article at BJ Penn. Bovada opened the odds. They opened Usman at minus 300. They opened Covington at plus 230. Right now, Usman's minus 250. Covington plus 195. Cole, I think it's a pick-up fight. Like, I don't understand these odds. So plus 185, you have to take Colby. Like, you have to, right? What do you think?
Yeah, I would favor Colby right now anyways. If you gave me them straight up, even money, I think I'd favor Colby after what I saw and what I've seen. Like, I think he's so good. Like, how many, like, he doesn't have that knockout power, but he's, like, similar to, like, Max Holloway, where against Ortega, like, he just threw so many punches that eventually it's going to start doing damage and you're going to end up getting TKO'd, even though you don't have a whole lot of power. Just the amount of volume you throw. And, like, the way he fights, too, it has to be so frustrating for your opponents because they can't get anything going. He's always in your face. Like, just start of the round, basically Lawler's taking one step and Covington already ran across the cage and is, like, right in front of him. So it's just crazy. But I don't know. And the walkout, too, that was so cool what he did. Like, he just embraces being the heel and everyone hating him like the "you suck." But, yeah, it was just a great performance from Colby.
No, I'm with you on that. Let's talk about a few other fights here. Jim Miller looked great. Okay, so I have an article at MMA.net about Jim Miller, and now some of the guys I work with there disagree with me, but I still wrote the article anyways. And I said that he has a borderline Hall of Fame case, and I'll tell you why, Cole. He has the most wins as a lightweight in UFC history, and he has the most fights in UFC history. And he's not done yet. He's only 35. He's still winning fights. So, Cole, if you had to predict right now, will Jim Miller be in the Hall of Fame 5 years down the road?
I think he will because, again, the UFC picks who goes in the Hall of Fame, and the UFC loves Jim Miller. Like, it's not like writers pick who it in. If it was like writers, I could see Miller not getting in just because he doesn't have the UFC championship, or he's really like he's been mixed results in the UFC in his career. But the UFC likes him. They put him in high spots all the time. And he finishes fights for him. He gets a lot of bonuses. So I think with that the UFC picking who gets in, I think he gets into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a good argument for it. He's already at 20 wins, right, in lightweight, so that's pretty good. Nasser Haqparast. Is this kid going to be a lightweight champion one day?
Yeah, he looked really good in that fight. And what a corner he has. GSP and Firas Zahabi, man. That is, I don't know. I think, like, we give him a ranked opponent next. I know he's been calling for that McDessie fight. And did you see McDessie responded?
What do you say?
It's super interesting. He goes, I don't know if I'll be able to fight this year. I left Rufus Sport and trying to figure out a new team, which is super weird because he was 3-0 or 2-0 with Rufus Sport. So I was going to send him a text to see why, but I don't know. It's just super interesting to see him weird Rufus Sport, but
he just pulled out a fight too recently. It's Smith, right? So poor guy, man. He never fights anymore.
Well, because I wonder if it like, I hate to speculate, but I know he's had to pull out a lot of fights due to injury. So I wonder if he's just getting frustrated with like the camp and he's always getting hurt in camp or whatnot. But I don't think Paras should get that fight. Like, I think he could if he wants it, but I think he should get someone ranked higher than McDessie.
Yeah, but again, it's a bad blood type of fight, grudge match. I'm guessing that's why he calls him out. But I'm with you. I think this kid is close to getting a ranked opponent. Like, that finish, Cole, was just devastating, man. Those ground and pound punches, jeez. All right, Gerald Mearshart, Trevin Giles. You picked Mearshart, right? I think you actually picked him. Good pick, I believe. The stoppage. Trials tapped with both hands, and Herb Dean didn't stop the fight, Cole. What were your thoughts when you saw that?
Everyone thinks Herb Dean is so good. He won Ref of the Year. But if you look at his resume, like, people think he's so good because he always refs the high-level fights. If there's 2 titles on the card, he's guaranteed to ref one of them. But he isn't that good. He misses a lot of stuff. Just this past year, he's had so many controversial, like, stoppages and letting fights go too long. Like, I don't know. Like, if you look at the Njeku fight, that ref.
We'll talk about that in a second. We'll talk about this fight, though.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I could get it if he tapped with one hand and it was kind of under Giles. You couldn't see, but he tapped with both. And then Giles's corner was screaming, saying he tapped. And Dean still didn't realize. I could see you wouldn't stop it if it's Mearshart's corner saying he tapped because you don't know. But if it's the guy that's getting submitted's corner saying he tapped, stop the fight, like, what are you doing? Like, I don't know. It's just a terrible reffing that fight was for Dean.
Yeah, it was sad. I mean, someone's gonna get hurt. You can say, "Oh yeah, the guy's just gonna go to sleep; he'll be fine." But I think someone's gonna get hurt one day, man. Especially with Herb Dean reffing, just been really inconsistent lately. And I talked about this the podcast yesterday. I think that Askren Lawler fight, man. Like, he just doesn't want to stop fights too early now, and he's actually stopping them too late, which is even worse. So, it's a tough job. Don't get me wrong. Being an MMA referee is probably one of the hardest jobs in sports as far as officiating goes, Cole. But, geez, the guy tapped with both hands. Both hands. I felt bad for the guy, man. Just a terrible stoppage. The Scott Holtzman fight, man, that was a pretty good fight. He gets the TKO win. Here's the other fight I want to talk about, though. You mentioned this a second ago. Kennedy and Chekawu against Darko Stosic. Multiple low blows committed by Stosic. He had 2 points taken away. I just want to give some love here to Gary Copeland, the referee in this fight, Cole. That's got to be some of the best refereeing I've seen in a long time. Great communication. He was talking to the corners. He was talking to the commission. He was very, animated with the fighters, saying, do not throw these low blows again. I think he did want to disqualify Stosic, but Jack was so tough. He wanted to tough it out and go to full 3. I think he probably should have taken the DQ. Either way, he gets the decision win. What were your thoughts on Gary Copeland's performance as referee in that fight, Cole?
Yeah, that was one of the best reffing I've ever seen in a while. Like, he was so good. And what I hate about a lot of refs is sometimes there's so many rules. You're in different states. Like, you don't know which rule applies in which. Like, they ref so many fights. But what Copeland which I've never really seen before, is he asked the commission. He's like, what do I do here? So many refs don't really know, and they'll just go, okay, no point or whatever. But he generally didn't know what to do. That's 3 low blows at that point. And he asked the commission, he's like, is this an automatic DQ or is this another point? Is it 2 points? Like really good reffing. I talked to Njeku yesterday, and I was talking to Safe after the fight, and they're like, this is one of the best reffing I've ever seen in my life. Like, and Safe has cornered so many fights, and he's like, I went up to that ref after and was like told him, like, you're one of the best refs I've ever seen. Like, how you handled that whole situation. But
yeah, Gary Copeland's a great ref. I mean, people just talk about him as mini Brock Lesnar. It's kind of a running joke in the MMA circles, but he's a great ref. There's a couple other really good refs out there, Cole. Keith Peterson, guy with the tattoos on his neck, he's a really good ref. And the one ref, his name's slipping my mind right now. He's a California guy with the Yosemite Sam mustache. What's his name?
Oh, yeah.
Mike Beltran. He's an amazing ref. He's so good. And these guys never get any love, Cole, because they don't do the main events. It's only Herb Dean and a couple other guys. But these guys there's some really good refs out there that truly do care about the fighters. And Herb Dean, I think, can take some lessons from those guys. Because how about the other fight with Shevchenko and Pudilova, Cole? What do you think about that stoppage, man?
Again, like, they're missing the taps. They're missing everything. Like, 3 people went to sleep. I get it. Like, Guida, you can, he just didn't tap, so that's just, automatic one. But the other 2 tapped. They tapped a lot. And to miss that twice is terrible.
It was bad. And, the way, Shevchenko got up and then, Pudilova's face was, planted on the mat. And this was man, is she dead or something? Listen, they're going to sleep. I get it. These chokes probably are going to kill anyone. But at the same time, Cole, at some point, the ref's got to be reprimanded. And it's Herb Dean does this. He's had some really bad performances this year. Again, don't get me wrong. He's had some good performances, too. And it's the ones where he does a good job, he doesn't get credit for. But there's been too many bad calls by him this year. And commission's got to talk to this guy and be like, yo, dude, what's going on here? I get it. MMA ref of the year, one of the most popular guys in the sport. But at the same time, Cole, that's not doing his job very well. And I couldn't help but just be like, wow, what is this guy doing right now? It's almost like he's got other things on his mind rather than the fight, which is the only thing he should have in his mind. Just a couple other fights in this card. It was a pretty good card, Cole. Mickey Gall gets the win. Matt Schnell. What about Matt Schnell? You talk about flyweight contenders. How far away from a title shot is this guy?
Well, I don't know. It's super so I thought an interim title would be created between Benavidez and Figueiredo, but Figueiredo just got booked between Tim Elliott.
Yeah.
So interesting fight. So now if there's an interim title fight, I would not be surprised if it's Benavidez and Matt Schnell fighting there. What Schnell does too with flyweight, he finishes his fights. Flyweight, there are a lot of decisions, but he gets a lot of submission wins. And he is so good on the ground that if he takes anyone down to the ground, he can submit anyone at any time.
No, one other thing I'll say about the flyweights is they cut a lot of guys. I feel like the guys they kept on are pretty exciting. It's almost like they made some pretty good cuts, getting rid of some older guys like Wilson Hayes and guys like that. They're just grinders. They're keeping guys that actually are standing and banging or going to the ground and finishing the fights, just not guys lying on top of each other. So Matt Schnell, his ground game as far as on his back goes, might be one of the best in MMA right now. 2 straight wins by triangle. Guy's good, man. This Laura Murphy fight, man. Wow. I actually picked her originally, Cole, and then switched my pick. Such a dumbass I am. But what a knockout, eh? 3rd round late stoppage. I don't remember the last time I guess Shevchenko and but when was the last time you saw that kind of finish from like a mid-tier fighter at flyweight. Like it's so rare, right?
Yeah, that was crazy. That punch landed so well. Like I don't know. It was a close fight. It was you could have had it. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if someone had it 2-0 either way or 1-1 at that point. Like super close fight, rounds where you could have given to anyone. It was like one or two punches really changed the round. But that knockout kind of came out of nowhere. Like she just caught her with a really good punch and just like I don't know, I've flyweight division and like you don't really see a lot of finishes, especially by knockout. And that was one of the best knockouts I've probably seen in that division.
Yeah, it was great. What about this guy Claudio Silva, man? When's he gonna get a ranked opponent? He's looked amazing. When's his turn?
Yeah, he looked really good, especially fighting a guy that takes the fight on short notice and then misses weight by what, like 5 pounds. And what I started to think of that when I saw the weigh-ins, I'm like, I like how Jesse Ronson at 231 basically told Sean Shelby, he's like, I'm not going to make weight. Can we do a catch weight? Because the commissioner won't let me cut it. And they basically just released him and don't like him anymore. But they mend fences now. But it's super interesting because like now this guy probably, if he would have won, he wouldn't have gotten cut. So like, is that a thing to fighters basically take any short notice, even if you know you can't make weight? Because then if you win, you're probably going to get another shot. Like, I don't know. It's just, but
It's hard to say. He
still,
might get cut too, though. They might be really pissed off and just cut him, right?
yeah. But Silva, what a performance! He should start getting ranked opponents, or at least opponents in that like 20 to 16 range at least next. But he looks really good.
Yeah, and Granger picks up a win in the first fight of the night. I picked her as an underdog. So overall, Cole, what do you think of the card? Like pretty good, right?
Yeah, that's what's funny about this. Like, if you look at the card on paper, this and UFC San Antonio, you'd be like, if you could only pick one, you're like, oh, I'd pick San Antonio, no problem. Like, the fights are way better. But this card was way better. It had a lot of interesting fights, good finishes, just an overall good card for a fight that didn't have any ranked fighters at all. And it was but it was really well done matchmaking by the UFC.
Yeah, I agree with that. Sometimes it's not about the rank guys; it's about the matchmaking. But at the same time, I think they could have used a stronger undercard because apparently the ratings were not good. Let's just talk quickly about Cyborg. She was officially released, quote unquote. Now, I want to get your thoughts about the interview with Laura Sanko. I gave my thoughts yesterday in the podcast. Like, again, I think Laura's great, man. Like, she's awesome. I love her on the Contender series. She does a great job doing the ring announcing and doing the interviews backstage. I think the death threats against her are disgusting. I think that the fans going after her are disgusting. Having said that, I think it was a really bad interview. What did you think?
Yeah, I think the interview looked so staged. Like, it was basically just, I think basically it was like, who's in the UFC office that can do this interview?
I feel bad
Laura,
for her. They probably just pulled her out and was like,
she just had to like, it was basically like, who is Megan O'Leary around? She probably wasn't around. So like, all right, let's just because Megan O'Leary does a lot of those interviews normally, but she probably wasn't around. So they just probably pulled Laura and was like, let's just trash Cyborg for like 15 minutes is what it felt like. And what I think is Dana White's entire thing was, oh, she wants easier fight. She doesn't want to fight Nunes. After the fight, all she was saying, she was like, I want that Nunes rematch. She had that shirt, Nunes Cyborg 2020, and the UFC made her take it off before she went and did all the media, which is saying something because obviously they just want to push that one thing that Cyborg doesn't want the fight, but everything she says in interviews says she wants that fight and she's never been offered it. So I don't know. That interview is just, it was like, what was it, like 22 minutes long or something like that, and probably about 17 minutes of it was just trashing Cyborg, and then they just threw in like two other questions to make it not just solely about Cyborg.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I agree 100%. I think it was one of those situations where she had to do her job and UFC told her you're doing the interview with them. But at the same time, again, it was a really bad interview in my opinion. It wasn't really an interview. It's more like a propaganda hit piece. Let's be honest here, Cole. Just a hit piece on Cyborg. And right now it looks like Cyborg's still discussing her options with other promotions. I saw that PFL, a couple of fighters there, Sarah Kaufman said that she wants her to sign there. But I still think Bellator is going to get her, Cole. Scott Coker's talked about it. How confident are you she signs with Bellator?
Yeah, I think it's Bellator or PFL. If I had to give a percentage, I'd say it's probably like 75-25. The thing PFL has going for it is 155 pounds, doesn't have to cut weight in $1 million.
Yeah.
But
there's pointing around. I mean, maybe she wants to fight 155.
but the
Maybe
thing
she
with
doesn't cut that weight at all, you know?
and then with Bellator, it's Scott Coker and Julia Budd, who's probably the second or third best featherweight in the world, and a real featherweight division.
I agree. Couple other things before we get out of here. Damian Maia and Ben Askren, any thoughts on that potential matchup?
Yeah. At first, I was like, Singapore, that's so weird for that to happen there. And then I'm like, oh, wait, Ben Askren fought in Singapore for years. So I feel like he'll have the fans behind him, given like what he did in one championship. But this fight could be a boring one. Like, it could just be Maya or Askren goes to the takedown. Like, it's a fight where I don't know if Askren wants to go for the takedown. Like, obviously, his pressure is so good that his whole style is wrestling and get them down. But Maya off his back is something you don't want to happen. And then we've seen fights like Maya and Woodley where if Maya can't get the takedown, how boring it is, or can't get down to the ground. So it either could be a finish or it's just going to be a 5-round fight where not much happens and a boring decision.
Yeah, I agree with that. One last thing, John Jones ripped the UFC voters for having Daniel Cormier ahead of him in the rankings. Who's your number one in the rankings, pound per pound?
I don't know. So like, the rankings first off are a joke. I don't know who does it. It's all recency bias. Like, you could have number 14 be on like a huge winning streak. This guy beats like the 15th guy and gets his like first, and he's like 2-2 in his last 4, and all of a sudden he's ahead of 14 for whatever, just because he fought last weekend. Like, I don't know, but pound for pound, it's really interesting. Like, I think I'd have Jones as my number one, but what makes me hesitant on that is he's only fought at light heavyweight. I think in pound for pound now, you have to fight in 2 weight classes. Like, you look at DC, Cejudo, Nunes, they all fought in 2 weight classes, all became champs in 2 weight classes. But I still think because Jones has 2 wins, well, one's a no contest over DC, he has to be ranked ahead of DC.
Yep, I'm with you on that. I mean, but at the same time, I've talked about this with John Jones before. It's the only criticism I have him, aside from the stuff, the steroids and the stuff outside the cage with all the crimes and stuff like that. But the one thing I have with John Jones, the problem is he's a guy who's only fought 205, and he's been amazing. But Cole, look at the best fighters ever. Many of them have fought in multiple weight classes, and that's the one issue I have with John Jones and his legacy. I would love to see him move to heavyweight and answer all those questions. So we'll see what happens there. Definitely a good chance that fight with DC gets made, but we'll see what happens in 2 weeks. I'm looking forward to breaking down that fight with you actually next week, Cole. DC versus Stipe 2. Anyways, guys, I think that's it for today. I think we got everything we wanted to cover. So, Cole, just tell people they can follow you on Twitter and what you have coming out this week.
At Cole Shelton 91, Liz Carmouche and Volkan Ozdemir interviews on BJ Penn, and just news on all the sites. Just everything goes on my Twitter. I do a lot. So just follow at Cole Shelton 91 on Twitter and you'll see everything I do.
Brace the grind, my man. Follow me on Twitter at MMAOB guys. You can follow me obviously at MMAOddsbreaker.com. All my writings there. This podcast is there. Like, share, subscribe. Tell your friends about it, guys. I really appreciate that. We're trying to grow the podcast, trying to grow the channel. So I appreciate that. The more, the better. Also check me out at bjpenn.com. Always posting news articles there, and MMARings.net, giving my opinion pieces there as well. So, guys, thanks again for tuning in. It was a good show today, Cole. Thanks for joining me, man. I'll be back tomorrow morning, guys, to talk about whatever happens tonight at Contender Series and whatever else happens in this crazy world we call the world of mixed martial arts. Guys, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.